Good morning. The first item of business is general questions. At question number 1, I call Michelle Thomson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what the current status is of its plans to add sex to the characteristics covered by the Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Act 2021.
Cabinet Secretary Angela Constance.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government is currently considering responses to the public consultation on the draft SSI to add the characteristic of sex to the Hate Crime and Public Order Act, which we undertook last year, and we intend to lay the final SSI in Parliament in the coming period.
Michelle Thomson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response, and I was listening very intently for something substantive. What I really want to know is a personal commitment from the Cabinet Secretary that the SSI will be laid before this Parliament goes into dissolution, because I cannot see how it's conceivable that sex is the only protected characteristic not covered by the Hate Crime Act, when, as the Scottish Government says itself, that sex and rather the bad behaviours that come towards women because of their sex class. And so I would seek a personal commitment from the Cabinet Secretary that it will happen. Thank you.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I very much do appreciate Mrs Thomson's interest in this matter, and if I can assure her both personally and politically that the Scottish Government wants to ensure these new criminal protections for women and girls that are provided through the Hate Crime Act for other characteristics of age, disability, religion and so forth. She'll be aware that we have to follow a super-affirmative process. That's what Parliament agreed when the hate crime legislation was passing, which meant that we had to publish a draft SSI, we have to consult on it, we are obliged to analyse the consultation and publish the consultation responses where permitted with the analysis, and that will be done when the SSI is laid, and the SSI will be laid in due course.
Tess White.
Presiding Officer, the Minister says it will be laid in due course. We don't know when. Only this week, on Tuesday, at the Equalities and Human Rights Committee, we were informed by the Minister for Equalities that she had not met the Justice Minister. That was absolutely alarming. And the inquiry, that was in the inquiry, in the 9 protected characteristics, sex being one, as now defined, clarified by the Supreme Court judgment. So my question is, Minister, you have still not included sex in the hate crime bill. You still haven't told us when. And why have you not met the Minister for Equalities?
Always through the Chair. Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, let me, in summary, repeat the essence of what I said to Michelle Thomson. I will be laying an SSI, and that SSI will be laid in time so that it is laid well in advance of this parliamentary session coming to an end, because I want to ensure that women and girls have these protections within the format of hate crime legislation, the same way that other protected characteristics do. So let me assure Chamber that that is all in hand. In terms of the second part of Tess White's question, no, the Equalities Minister has certainly not met with me in recent times around the various equality duties. What I would say, I do recall some time ago, early in the Minister's appointment as Equalities Minister, that she met with ministers collectively, and has certainly on more than one occasion reminded us all as ministers of our collective responsibilities to meet our equality duties. And if need be, we could go back into the records and find that meeting when Ms Stewart held with myself and a whole range of other ministers. But it's going back some time, and I'll have to come back to the member.
Thank you. I will remind members this is our shortest question session of the week. Concise questions and responses appreciated. Question number 2, Claire Baker.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government how many people in Mid Scotland and Fife are eligible for the pension age winter heating payment have not yet received their payment for winter 2025-26.
Cabinet Secretary Shirley Ann Somerville.
pension age winter heating payment will support at least 880,000 pensioners with heating bills this winter. The UK Government's 2024 decision to cut winter heating payment was a betrayal of millions of pensioners, and whilst the belated U-turn was welcome, costs are rising and many people will struggle with household bills this winter. That's why the Scottish Government is taking action and will deliver the strongest package of winter support compared to anywhere else in the UK. By the 14th of December 2025, £124.9 million was paid through over 837,000 winter heating payments, with updated figures due on the 4th of February.
Claire Baker.
So I think this actually means that around 300,000 people have not yet received their payments. And the First Minister did promise they'd receive them by St Andrew's Day. And now, more than 6 weeks after St Andrew's Day and well into the winter weather, there are still people wondering where those payments are. Can the Cabinet Secretary advise why it has taken so long for payments to be made and when those who are still waiting for payments will receive it? And will the Scottish Government apologise to all those pensioners who were promised payment in November and did not receive it?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the payments did begin in November, just as the Scottish Government had laid out, and those will continue through the winter. What we've also done throughout the winter, presiding officer, is ensure that the winter heating payment, which does go to pensioners on low incomes, is also being paid. Now, that's a payment that's not guaranteed anywhere else in the UK, but it's guaranteed here in Scotland. And what we've also paid is the children's winter heating payment to children on the highest rates of disability. That package that we have is stronger and more robust than anywhere else in the UK. That's begun in November, is moving through the winter months at the timetable as set out previously, and we are on track to deliver that this winter.
Question number 3, Rhoda Grant.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the independent review of maternity services in Caithness, including the remit and timescale of the review, and what detail has been shared with relevant duty bearers.
Minister Jenny Minto.
Officer. The Scottish Maternity and Neonatal Task Force will look at the requirement for and scope of a national review based on the emerging themes and the outcomes of the Healthcare Improvement Scotland inspections of maternity units across Scotland and any other area the task force might identify. The Cabinet Secretary has been clear that the task force will look at rural maternity services as one of its first areas of focus and review the issues in rural communities, including Caithness and Stranraer. A full work plan will be agreed by the task force following the first meeting in January 2026, and Parliament will be updated in due course.
Rhoda Grant.
In a Freedom of Information response, NHS Highland said there's no plans for an independent review of Caithness maternity services, but rather that this would sit within the wider remit of the task force. The Cabinet Secretary knows this Parliament voted for an independent review of Caithness maternity services. The need for this was further highlighted with Caithness being cut off from the rest of the country for days during the last weeks of bad weather. No one could get to Rigmore Hospital. Therefore, can I ask whether the task force will be independent of government, whether it will be specifically asked to examine all aspects of Caithness maternity services, including the journey to Inverness, and to making recommendations for the safe delivery of maternity services in the county of Caithness?
Minister.
I thank Rhoda Grant for her follow-up question, and I would like to put on record my thanks to the staff in NHS Highland in the way that they have coped with the really difficult weather, including the wonderful midwives that are based in Caithness. As I said in my first response, it's for the task force and its expert members to determine whether further action is required, and they will determine the scope. I, as Minister of Public Health and Women's Health, will be chairing it, but my co-chairs are both independent of government. Well, my co-chairs are Anne Gow and Professor Anna Glazier.
Question number 4, Jamie Hepburn.
To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on the importance of the supply chain to the Scottish whisky industry.
Minister Richard Lockhead.
The Scottish whisky industry is one of Scotland's most significant economic sectors, contributing over £5 billion in exports, and a resilient, competitive supply chain is of course essential to its continued success. And the industry supports thousands of jobs across Scotland, not only in distillation and maturation, but also in farming, malting, packaging, logistics, engineering, tourism and professional services as well. The wider supply chain is therefore integral to national economic growth and rural sustainability and export performance, and it's crucial to safeguarding the global reputation of Scotch whisky and ensuring the long-term competitiveness of the sector.
Jamie Hepburn.
The First Minister has led from the front to protect Scotch whisky from US tariffs, taking the case direct to the US Government. Has the Minister got any update as to whether the UK Government has followed this up with the United States to protect the whisky industry and its supply chain, such as packagers Eurostampo in my constituency, who recently expanded their site and come on with Scottish enterprise support? Or are we still left with the view that the UK Government view the Scottish food and drink sector as nothing more than a cash cow to support the UK Exchequer?
Minister.
Jamie Hepburn makes a good point in that the whisky sector is not just about distillers, it's about the wider supply chain that benefits constituencies like Jamie Hepburn's. And indeed, in terms of the tariffs issue, the First Minister was highly praised by the sector in Scotland, including my own constituency of Speyside. And he picked up the cudgels on behalf of the sector and took their case directly to the White House. And indeed, I raised these issues with my UK counterpart, Chris Bryant, just earlier this month at our meeting as well. We are still waiting for the United Kingdom Government to deliver on what we all expect, to give Scotch whisky the priority it deserves in these negotiations and secure tariff exemptions from the US. And, of course, we are also disappointed that our calls for the disparity in alcohol duty to be addressed in the latest UK budget went unheard, and instead the spirits sector faces a further increase in duty rates, which will rise by 18% in 3 years. That takes the tax burden on a bottle of Scotch to an eye-watering 72%. So I agree with the member's comments and will continue to pursue this case.
Briefest supplementary, Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Having recently visited the Annandale Distillery in Dumfriesshire, I was impressed with their commitment to net zero, with a significant investment in a multi-million-pound game-changing thermal energy storage system, partly funded by the last UK Conservative Government. Therefore, can I ask the Minister what support the Scottish Government can give to the Scotch whisky industry to meet its decarbonisation and sustainability goals, not just within our world-class distilleries, but also through the wider supply chain?
Minister.
Thanks. I have not had the privilege of visiting that particular constituency in the member's area. Maybe perhaps one day I'll have that opportunity. However, in the past, in recent years, the Scottish Government has given substantial support to the whisky sector to decarbonise their operations, and they are playing a really important role in achieving the country's national aims in terms of decarbonisation, and we will continue to work in partnership with the sector going forward.
Question number 5, Sue Webber.
To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on whether reliance on local enforcement to tackle antisocial and dangerous e-scooter use is creating a postcode lottery in public safety, with some communities protected and others left exposed.
Minister Siobhan Brown.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government does not accept that reliance on local enforcement creates a postcode lottery in public safety. Police Scotland operates within nationally set strategic police priorities, which apply to the whole of Scotland and emphasise public safety, prevention and consistency, while allowing appropriate local flexibility to respond to community needs. Scottish Government continues to support policing capacity through record funding of £1.64 billion in this financial year, and Police Scotland has a higher number of officers per capita than England and Wales, and the Scottish Government funding enables Police Scotland to take on more recruits last financial year than any other time other than 2013. Operational policing decisions, including enforcement action against illegal and antisocial e-scooter use, are rightly a matter for Police Scotland, and the member will be aware of my commitment to working collectively to address concerns raised during the debate on December the 9th, and I welcome the positive examples of Police Scotland's enforcement activity in this area.
Sue Webber.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I did struggle to hear the answer, Presiding Officer, so I'll do my best. In my region of Edinburgh, e-scooter confiscations have tripled in just 2 years, while some areas across the country have recorded none. And it is clearly a growing menace to everyday Scots who feel unsafe just walking about in their own high streets. So these statistics do state that there is a lack of consistency, and the Minister has denied that there is that postcode lottery for public safety. So can I ask, what will the Scottish Government finally press the UK Government for a clear national framework on registration, insurance and licensing, instead of letting this problem get worse?
Minister.
Thank you. And I just would like to say, I know that we've had lots of meetings over the last year or so about this, and hopefully we'll be having another one with MSPs who have an interest in this area. I'll just highlight Minister Jim Fairley and I did write to the UK Government regarding this in October. I received a letter last week saying Labour Government did not feel that there was any necessary legislation moving forward, which is very disappointing, but I will keep members updated on that.
Question number 6, Liz Smith.
You asked the Scottish Government what its response is to the open letter from Scotland's elite swimming athletes sent to the First Minister on the 6th of December 2025.
Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government agrees there is a real opportunity to create a lasting legacy for children across Scotland from the 2026 Summer of Sport. And I know this is an area that Liz Smith cares a great deal about and shares my enthusiasm for. The 2026-27 budget announced an additional £40 million of funding for sport and physical activity. This includes the universal offer of swimming tuition for primary school children in Scotland to gain vital water safety skills, and I hope the Chamber will welcome this announcement and support the budget proposals which provide vital support for the sector and open a range of sports and activities to more children.
Liz Smith.
Well, I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response, but is he aware that earlier this morning, firstly at 9:48 and then again at 10:15, that a correction to the record was made by Shona Robson, not sure if it's another of these production errors, but to say that to the question that Jackson Carlaw asked yesterday in the budget was in fact factually inaccurate, namely that the one-year commitment is not in fact 1 year, it's being rolled out over a sustainable period. Now that is very welcome, Cabinet Secretary, but can we ask the Scottish Government what action are they taking to ensure that the 18 local authorities that are not making full provision of swimming lessons are actually now doing so, and that they have access to swimming pools in the first place?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I can confirm for the record, which I think is incredibly positive, that this is indeed recurring funding. So, and I think Liz Smith shares my enthusiasm for this, and I think this is good news in terms of swimming provision and giving children the life-saving skills, but also ensuring that we can give opportunity to the next Duncan Scotts and other elite swimmers to come through the system. In terms of progress with local authorities, it's exactly because of the variability that there is in terms of provision that we are providing this funding in order to enable them to come forward with that provision for all children, primary children in Scotland. And those engagements with local authorities will continue, and I'll make sure, given her interest, which I genuinely accept and understand, that Liz Smith is kept updated on that.
Question number 7, Bill Kidd.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how the measures announced in the draft budget for 2026-27 will further the aims of tackling child poverty.
Cabinet Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville.
Eradicating child poverty is at the heart of the Scottish Budget and Scottish Spending Review, which outlines how we will drive continued progress. This includes developing the systems and legislation to increase the Scottish child payment to £40 for children under 1 year old. We are also investing more than £100 million across the spending review to support delivery of a universal breakfast club offer for primary school-aged children, alongside increased investment in wraparound activity clubs. And through an annual £50 million package of whole family support, we will ensure families receive the support they need when they need it.
Bill Kidd.
I thank you for that. I welcome the Government's commitment to putting the best cost-of-living support package anywhere in the UK front and centre. Particularly welcome the boost to the Scottish child payment, £40 for families with a baby from 2027, which has been welcomed by UNICEF and Save the Children Scotland has said it's a bold action, and this is a moment of hope for families and for all of us. Can the Minister or Cabinet Secretary say what analysis it is undertaken as to the impact of this policy on child poverty?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the new premium will undoubtedly assist and deliver increased support for families with children under 1. The Scottish Fiscal Commission estimates that around 12,000 children will receive this increased support when the payment begins in the financial year 2027-28. This support will make a real difference. I heard from mums in Pilton only this morning about what the difference the Scottish child payment makes and how they think the premium will make even more of a difference. And as Save the the children have said, investing in the tiniest members of our society will sow the seeds for a brighter future.
Thank you. That concludes general questions. The next item of business is First Minister's questions. Question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, President Officer. The cost of living is hitting hard for people across Scotland, and John Swinney promised to help. So what did he do? Well, he's cutting income tax, but only for some, and by a maximum of £31.75 per year. That works out at 61p a week. That wouldn't even buy you a bag of peanuts. John Swinney's budget might even...
It's your tax cuts.
Let's carry on with
Rachel
our business.
Hamilton's entirely right. It wouldn't even buy you a bag of peanuts. John Swinney's budget might even have broken a world record because a Scottish Government tax advisor says, and I quote, that it may be the smallest tax cut in history. Does John Swinney really think his insulting tax cut will actually help Scotland's struggling households?
First Minister.
I'm pleased to see that the additions for the pantomime dame are being entered early by Rachel Hamilton in Parliament today, because that was frankly pantomime stuff from the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party has come forward with a proposition about tax cuts which would involve £1 billion worth of cuts in public expenditure, with not a scrap of detail about how that would be delivered. So that is a false proposition. However, my government has brought forward a range of measures which build on the existing cost of living support, such as free prescriptions, free eye tests, the free bus travel that's available in Scotland, with an expansion of support.
Can I just ensure that we can all hear one another? That would be helpful and, of course, necessary. First Minister.
With an expansion of support for breakfast clubs and additional investment in after-school activities, by the measures that have been taken through the Extra Time programme, by the increase in the Scottish Child Payment and the expansion of the Scottish Child Payment for babies under 1. And what that's a demonstration of is a government that is on the side of the people of Scotland, and I'm proud of the measures that we've set out in the budget on Tuesday.
Russell Finlay.
John Swinney gave these taxpayers a miserly cut, not to help anyone, but to get a cheap and easy headline. And for many others, income taxes will rise even further.
Hard workers, teachers.
And one of the reasons for John Swinney's tax rate is so that he can spend even more on benefits. Now, we value the safety net for those in genuine need. But the
Let's hear Mr. Finlay.
benefits bill is out of control, and it's now going to go up by another £650 million. I'll keep saying it, no matter how noisy they get, Scotland can't afford this. The Scottish Conservatives believe that taxes can't keep rising in order to fund higher spending on benefits. So why doesn't John Swinney understand that his reckless approach is unfair and unsustainable?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, nobody in Scotland takes seriously Russell Finlay's claim that the Conservative Party values the safety net of social security, because every week they come to this Parliament and attack social security expenditure that's keeping children out of poverty. Now, as a matter of fact, the updated Scottish Fiscal Commission forecasts show a substantial reduction in the Scottish Government's benefits investment over and above the block grant adjustments received from the United Kingdom Government. That demonstrates that the action the Scottish Government is taking is sustainable and is, as is demonstrated by the budget that we have put forward, as we have always undertaken since we formed the government. We bring forward costed financial programmes that are delivered for the people of Scotland, that deliver real benefits for the people of Scotland, and the Conservatives are unable to match the record for financial stewardship of this government and the support for the vulnerable in our country.
Russell Finlay.
We value social security, but we will always tell the truth about the SNP's out-of-control, unaffordable benefits bill. John Swinney's economic approach is ruinous. There is another way. The only way, responsible, credible and sustainable way to raise more revenue for public services is by growing Scotland's economy. And you achieve this by supporting those who create jobs and generate wealth. Yet Scottish businesses face tax rises of almost £300 million in the coming weeks. And their verdict on John Swinney's budget is damning. CBI Scotland calling it a missed opportunity. UK Hospitality Scotland saying it missed the mark spectacularly on business support. And the Federation of Small Businesses saying that ministers must urgently reconsider their approach to economic growth. So when will John Swinney learn that he's got to back business, not attack business?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I recognise the challenges that are always felt in the business community. I think of all the things I could be accused of, I've always been a member of the government who's had very close and active dialogue with the business community in Scotland. Now, the Scottish Government's budget for the forthcoming financial year will ensure the lowest basic property rate since 2018-19, and it will support business and communities with a package of reliefs worth an estimated £864 million in 26-27. That's before I get to the fact that one of the key asks from the business community was about increased support for the college sector. And the Government has increased the college's budget by £70 million in the budget. And another call from the business community is support for infrastructure investment. And we set out our plans on infrastructure. And yesterday, the Transport Secretary...
Let's hear one another.
And yesterday, the Transport Secretary told Parliament about the delivery of the plans to dual the A9, one of the central economic pledges of this government. And at a time when unemployment is lower in Scotland than the rest of the United Kingdom, where GDP per capita has increased at a faster rate in Scotland than it has in the rest of the United Kingdom, this government delivers for the Scottish economy, and we're going to carry on doing so.
Russell Finlay.
He says he recognises the challenges facing businesses, but then decides to make them worse. For the avoidance of any doubt, the Scottish Conservatives will not back and cannot back a budget that does nothing to help Scotland's workers and businesses. Delivered by a Finance Secretary who's running for the hills, it hammers people with higher taxes to fund a bloated benefit system. It's absolutely mind-blowing that Labour and the other so-called opposition parties will let this SNP burach of a budget pass. It's a desperate budget that kills aspiration. It's a damaging budget that harms business. And it's a dishonest budget that will need to be fixed within months. It's the same old John Swinney. Don't the people of Scotland deserve lower taxes, fairer benefits and a government focused on economic growth?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, our budget delivers on the priorities of the people of Scotland, strengthening our National Health Service and supporting people and businesses with the challenges of the cost of living. In this budget, the Scottish Government is expanding the best package of cost of living support anywhere.
First Minister, sorry, I do know, Mr Kerr, that you share my view that we should always carry ourselves in a very parliamentary manner. I'd be grateful if you might demonstrate that, Mr Kerr. First Minister.
Presiding Officer, this budget delivers on the priorities of the people of Scotland, about strengthening our National Health Service, about supporting people and businesses with the cost of living. Thanks to our decisions, 55% of Scottish taxpayers are now expected to pay less income tax than if they lived in England. The people of Scotland have a government that is on their side, and all the current indications show that the people of Scotland want to have this government here for the long term to stay on their side.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. John Swinney's 19th budget lacks ambition for Scotland, and it fails to deal with the structural issues created by this tired SNP government. They can only be resolved by changing the Scottish Government in May. Now, while he brags about his £6 a year tax cut for the lowest paid,
Let's hear Mr. Sarwar. Let's hear Mr. Sarwar.
While he brags about his £6 a year tax cut for the lowest paid, 1 million Scots, including nurses, teachers and police officers, face being forced to pay more, all while his government wastes billions. A tax cut worth 11p a week for the lowest earners, while thousands of nurses pay £400 more and thousands of teachers pay £600 more than they would in the rest of the UK. Even his own tax adviser says this is a political stunt. So why does John Swinney believe that someone earning £33,500 has the broadest shoulders and therefore should pay more tax in Scotland?
First Minister.
If I could explain to Mr Sarwar that a Band 6 nurse at the bottom of the scale will take home an additional £1,994 after tax compared to the same band in England. A qualified teacher at the bottom of the band will take home £6,365 more after tax in Scotland than the equivalent in England. So there are the facts for Mr Sarwar. For a Band 6 nurse living in Scotland will take home... Mr Sarwar asked me about nurses, and I'm giving him an answer about nurses. A Band 6 nurse at the bottom of the scale will take home an additional £1,994 because they live in Scotland, not England, and a teacher £6,365 more in Scotland than in England. That's because this government delivers fair pay for public service workers.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, John Swinney very deliberately focuses on the lowest band and ignores the thousands of nurses and teachers that are paying more tax here in Scotland. So while 1 million Scots face paying more, this 19th John Swinney budget doesn't even try and deal with the issues leading to billions of pounds being wasted and opportunities squandered. No plan to deal with delayed discharge, meaning taxpayers pick up a bill of £500 million. No plan to deal with Scotland's prison system, while people pay £1 billion and rising for the new Berlini in Glasgow. And no plan to grow Scotland's economy, costing us £800 million. All of those things can only come about with a change of government in May. And he can't solve the big issues he has created. But
Let's hear one another.
But there is an urgent new one that risks the future of thousands of businesses. Why has there been no pause to business rate re-evaluations, meaning many businesses face a 400% increase, far greater than any rate relief, and risk their survival and the loss of thousands of jobs? Why has there been no pause to those re-evaluations?
First Minister.
I notice that Mr Sarwar has moved the subject on from the tax position of teachers and nurses, because I have completely demolished the arguments that he's put in front of me today. Now, on the subject of business rates, the business rates position, of course, is a product of two elements: the independent valuation that is undertaken and the policy decisions taken by this government. So the independent valuation, which is agreed across Parliament, has taken its course. But in policy terms, this government has put in place a 15% relief to retail, hospitality and leisure premises liable for the basic or intermediate property rate in mainland Scotland. We've expanded 100% relief for retail and hospitality and leisure businesses on our islands. We've maintained the small business bonus scheme, and crucially, we have put in place a business rates package of reliefs worth an estimated £864 million in this forthcoming financial year. That is the government investing to support business, to support the economy, along with a range of other measures which I hope Mr Sarwar will support in the budget.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, in the words of his old pal Alec Neil, he's talking rubbish, because he's failed to deal with the serious question of re-evaluations.
Let's hear Mr Sarwar.
Re-evaluations that see some businesses being forced to pay 300% or 400% higher, risking the survival of those businesses, but he completely ignored the question. Now, the one bit of good news is that Scots don't have to put up with his failure for much longer, and in May they can choose a new government. Because the SNP have spent the last 19 years...
Sorry, Mr Sarwar. Somewhat noisy. Let's hear one another.
It's OK, we'll say cheerio to Shona Robertson in 4 months' time too, because the SNP have spent the last 19 years failing to deal with the real issues facing Scotland, and they have nothing new to deal with the crisis created on their watch. Nothing to deal with hundreds of thousands of Scots stuck on NHS waiting lists. Nothing to deal with drugs deaths emergency killing hundreds a year. Nothing to deal with the homelessness crisis that leaves 10,000 kids stuck in temporary accommodation, and nothing to help businesses, wages or the economy grow, and nothing for the thousands of our amazing young people missing out on the education they deserve. John Swinney has had 20 years. He's had his chance and he's failed, hasn't he?
First Minister.
I don't think today is the day for Mr Sarwar to be in a strong position to accuse me of talking rubbish.
Absolutely.
Because this morning, a campaigner, a health campaigner, has raised the fact publicly that she has requested from Mr Sarwar a formal apology after a campaign leaflet, which I have in front of me, was posted to thousands and thousands of homes around the country with a false quotation in support of his party in the leaflet. And the campaigner who was falsely quoted asked a fair question. If they've written that out of nowhere, what else have they lied about? So I don't think Mr Sarwar is in a position to say to me anything about the budget, because not only has he misled the public in a campaign leaflet which a member of the public has called out, Mr Sarwar is wrestling with reform to try to get into second place in the opinion polls this morning. Mr Sarwar knows that it's all over, it's finished, the dream is gone, he's in opposition and we're going to stay in government.
Question number 3, Gillian Mackay.
The First Minister's government has long aspired to Scotland being an independent Nordic nation, but right now our Nordic neighbours need our help. Yesterday in the White House, Donald Trump repeated his threat to, in his words, conquer Greenland. This is no empty threat and comes directly off the back of his immoral and illegal invasion of Venezuela. Scotland must stand up to Trump and his contempt for international law and reassure the people of Greenland that we will not be complicit in any part of an attempted annexation. So can the First Minister commit to ensuring that the United States military will be banned from using Scottish infrastructure and assets, including all of our publicly owned airports, if they launch operations against our Nordic allies?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I acknowledge the importance of the issues and the concern that Gillian Mackay raises with me today. And as I have made clear over the course of the last couple of weeks, but actually as I've made clear over the entirety of my political life, I believe fundamentally in the international rules-based system for ensuring peace and stability within the world. And as I expressed about the situation in Venezuela, and as I put on the record last week in response to Mercedes v Alba, I did not believe that the intervention in Venezuela could be justified within the international rules-based system. Now, obviously, there is Gillian Mackay raises issues with me about the use of military of infrastructure within Scotland that is under the control of the Scottish Government. And I want to make it clear that I believe it is important that all of that infrastructure, if it were ever to be used, can only be used consistent with the international rules-based system for the arrangements between countries, and I will ensure that is the case as First Minister.
Gillian Mackay.
First Minister, it's not good enough for us to be vague on this. This is a US government who are pulling their own citizens out of their communities, have shot a mother in broad daylight and are actively advertising that they want to invade other countries. And people across the world are terrified. And
Let's hear Ms Mackay. Mr Kerr, I'm chairing the Parliament at the moment. Thank you. Ms Mackay.
People across the world are terrified, and we have the ability to take action. So again, First Minister, will you stop US military using all publicly owned Scottish airports if they launch operations in Greenland and stand with the international community?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I absolutely stand with the international community on the resolute views that have been expressed about the situation in Greenland, about protecting the status of Greenland and the right of the people of Greenland to determine their own future. I state that unreservedly to Parliament. And what I also say, and I will say it again in the hope that I can express this clearly to the public and to Parliament, I will insist that the infrastructure that is under the control of the Scottish Government can and should only be used to support the international rules-based system, because that is the foundation of peace that I've enjoyed throughout my life, and which I want to make sure is the case for my children and my grandchildren.
Thank you. Question number 4, Keith Brown.
To ask the First Minister whether he will provide an update regarding the Scottish Government's latest engagement with the UK Government in relation to the distribution of local growth fund allocations in Scotland.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, despite repeated requests over the past year, we have had no meaningful discussion with the UK Government on the Local Growth Fund. The Secretary of State for Scotland wrote to us on the day of the announcement, stating that UK Government officials would be in contact, but we have no more detail on this programme, and this announcement has come far too late. The Scottish Government and local authorities repeatedly warned the UK Government that any reduction in funding would have a devastating impact, and we now see this with reports of some organisations issuing redundancy notices. This programme does not come close to matching the Shared Prosperity Fund that it will replace, and leaves 9 Scottish local authorities with no allocation whatsoever.
Keith Brown.
I thank the First Minister for his answer, and you'll be aware that in Wales, the Labour Government will decide how to spend £547 million of local growth funding, whereas in Scotland it appears the UK Government intends to spend Scotland's £140 million for us. At the same time, analysis shows that Forth Valley, which includes my constituency, faces a cut of around a third compared with current funding levels, threatening employability, skills and business support programmes that sustain local jobs. In my constituency, local groups will lose jobs. Does the First Minister agree that this represents blatant political bias, with Scotland's communities not only shortchanged — I don't know why the Tories don't like that being raised, but this represents blatant political bias, with Scotland's communities not only shortchanged, but denied the right to decide their own priorities, and that while Labour politicians in Wales are defending devolution, they called Starmer's approach a constitutional outrage. It's time for Labour MSPs in this chamber to do the same, or accept that Scotland would be far better served by a Scottish Parliament with the full powers of independence.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, there are two issues that I'd want to address in what Mr Brown has raised with me. The first is the fact that in the quantum of support that's available, the resources available in Scotland are dwarfed by those that are available in Wales. So there is no equity in the arrangements that have been put in place. The second point is that in Wales, where there is a Labour administration, the UK Labour Government has decided to allocate that money to the Welsh Government to enable distribution to take place in a complementary way to the priorities of the Welsh Government. And I think that's a rational and logical position to adopt. In Scotland, the Labour Government has engaged in no dialogue with us whatsoever about the delivery of this funding, and it is being deployed in a way chosen by the UK Government with no regard to the priorities that are democratically agreed by this Parliament. And worse than all of that, people in Scotland are losing jobs just now because of the decisions of a Labour Government. And when you add that to the decisions about employers' national insurance contributions, what that shows is the Labour Government is costing Scotland's jobs. We can't afford to have any more control from Labour in Scotland.
Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, Clackmannanshire has just received £9.8 million of investment through the Local Growth Fund. This money came from the UK Government, as already has been allocated and discussed. It came openly, transparently and in partnership with local leaders. In contrast, your own 26-27 budget has been called misleading and not good enough by the Institute of Fiscal Studies. So can I ask the First Minister, who's to blame for the flattering figures identified by the Institute of Fiscal Studies and the Fraser-Valley Institute? Is it the Cabinet Secretary for Finance or yourself, First Minister?
First Minister.
Well, I think we're going to have some consistency on the Conservative benches, because Alexander Stewart has turned up here and he's spoken to Parliament as an advocate, a cheerleader for the Labour Government in London, when his party leader is denouncing the Labour Government in London. I think the Conservatives have got to get their act together. Or should I say, those that are left, because many of them are getting chucked out because they're dabbling with reform. It's all over for the Tory party.
Question number 5, Douglas Ross.
To ask the First Minister for what reason the Scottish Government is going to court to continue to allow it to house male prisoners in the female prison estate, in light of any projections it has made of the cost to taxpayers in Scotland of challenging the Supreme Court ruling in this way.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the judgment of the Supreme Court is accepted by the Scottish Government. What we are doing, as any responsible government must, is ensuring our policies comply with all of our legal obligations, including the Scotland Act and the European Convention on Human Rights. Every key area of government which is or may be affected by the Supreme Court judgment is carrying out assessments across legislation, guidance and policies, and in some areas changes have already been made. The prisons guidance has not been changed, and it can be taken from that the Scottish Government has concluded that it does not need to be changed in light of the Supreme Court judgment. For Women Scotland has brought proceedings challenging that conclusion, as they are entitled to do so. The matter is now before the court. The Scottish Government has to make difficult decisions which balance the interests and rights of individuals, often in complex situations, and this is one such situation.
Douglas Ross.
I'm not allowed to call the First Minister a liar, but that answer was not truthful. Well, I've just said I'm not allowed to do it, but he's not giving a truthful answer. It is desperate stuff from the First Minister. How on earth can he stand up here and say the government is respecting the Supreme Court ruling when it's in court arguing the very opposite? And First Minister, these actions threaten women's safety. Right now, at this very moment, there are 3 biological males housed in Scotland's female prison estate. Alex Stewart was jailed for 19 years for murder after stabbing his victim 16 times in the chest. Melissa Young was jailed for 20 years for murder and left his victim with 29 injuries from multiple stab wounds. And Paris Green was jailed for 18 years for torture and murder. He recently assaulted a female member of staff, but has still not been moved to a male prison. So let me ask the First Minister this. These evil killers are all housed with women prisoners. Are they male or female?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, as I indicated in my earlier answer, the Scottish Government has got to ensure that on all occasions our policies comply with our legal obligations, including the Scotland Act and the European Convention on Human Rights. So in these situations, the Government has got to wrestle with complex situations and make difficult decisions that balance and reflect the rights.
Hear the First Minister.
The interests and rights of individuals. Now, this is a matter that is actively in front of the courts at this time. Now, the Scottish Ministers appreciate the public interest in this case, and in the particular circumstances of this case, and in the interest of open justice, the Government will publish our written case, that being our answers to the judicial review, and our note of argument ahead of the hearing due to begin on the 3rd of February. Making the materials lodged with the court publicly available will allow anyone with an interest to follow in a well-informed way what is said in court. I stress this is a matter that is actively in front of the court, and the Government is trying to make information available to ensure that members of the public can follow the case in a well-informed way.
I call Ruth Maguire.
Presiding Officer, the need for protection of space for women who sit at board tables has been accepted and the law corrected. But a policy that means female prisoners, a majority of whom have experienced male violence, may have to share close quarters with male-bodied inmates while in the care of the state is being defended. Knowing everything that we do about trauma, given the countless testimonies by women on this matter, including both privately and publicly by a number of his own party colleagues, does the First Minister understand just how appalling the Government's actions feel to many of us, and how difficult it is to reconcile the Scottish Government's words on the protection of single-sex spaces for females with their actions on this matter?
First Minister. Thank you. Thank you.
President, I acknowledge and understand and appreciate the strength of feeling that is expressed to me by Ruth Maguire, and I understand that, and I understand the views and the points that she makes and that she expresses on behalf of those who have had traumatic experiences. But I stress what I said in my earlier answer. The judgment of the Supreme Court is accepted by the Scottish Government. What we are doing is ensuring that our policies comply with all of our legal obligations, including the Scotland Act and the European Convention on Human Rights, and the Government is obliged to ensure that that is the case. And we have considered this issue, and the actions that we are taking are consistent with that consideration.
Pauline McNeill.
So the Government claim that they do accept the Supreme Court ruling on the definition of women in the Equality Act, but I'm not certain that they do. And to be honest, I am not sure the First Minister fully understands the impact that this is having, because they have chosen to advance an argument in court that a blanket ban on housing trans women in the women's estate may violate their human rights under the European Convention on Human Rights. So what consideration did the Government give to the human rights of female prisoners to serve their sentence with dignity and safety from male-bodied prisoners? So I ask the First Minister today, in the likely event that the Government will lose this court case in the light of the Supreme Court judgment, when will the Government soon after comply with this judgment, and will that policy be changed as a matter of urgency?
First Minister.
Pauline McNeill indicated that questioned the Government's acceptance of the Supreme Court judgment, and I want to say once again the Government accepts unreservedly the Supreme Court judgment. As a consequence, we have revised policy guidance that is in place in other areas of policy to ensure compatibility with the Supreme Court judgment. In the case of the guidance on prisoners, the Government has made an assessment, and that is now being tested in the courts, and the issue will be determined by the courts, and out of the respect that I have for the decision-making in the courts, I want to make sure the court is free to make its judgment on the application of the guidance that the government has put in place.
Question number 6, Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's response is to findings published by the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Glasgow, indicating that a majority of clinicians anticipate practical challenges in implementing the Assisted Dying for Terminally Ill Adults Scotland Bill.
Thank you. I have to say I'm somewhat disconcerted that we don't have a live audio-video feed for Ms Duncan-Glancy. I'll let this question go ahead in this instance until we seek to resolve this issue. First Minister.
President, the Scottish Government is aware of the findings of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Glasgow detailing their members' views on assisted dying legislation. Similar to the College's own position, the Scottish Government maintains a position of neutrality on the bill. Our Stage 2 assessment on non-government amendments to the bill, focusing on the technical, legal and delivery aspects, was in part informed by the evidence stakeholders provided to the Health, Social Care and Sport Committee, and we continue to pay close attention to stakeholder views.
Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I do hope that the technical issues have resolved themselves. I thank the First Minister for that answer. As MSPs, it is important that we listen to experts, including those who will be tasked with implementing any change in the law. In this case, those who will be helping people to die. So can I ask the First Minister, does he agree with me that if those experts tell us that it could be unsafe and inoperable, we should listen to them?
First Minister.
President Officer, as I indicated in my earlier answer, the Government is neutral on this bill. It is a matter of conscience and personal decision-making, I think, for all members of Parliament on this question. My own views of opposition to this bill are well known publicly and expressed, and it will be up to individual members to assess the points that are expressed by a variety of stakeholders as Parliament considers this important bill.
Liam MacArthur.
Thank you. As the First Minister will recall, Parliament voted to support the general principles of my bill at stage 1, since when both the Scottish and UK governments have worked constructively to ensure a comprehensive system of assisted dying can be implemented, if that remains the will of MSPs, and I put on record my thanks to both of them for those efforts. At this point, however, can the First Minister assure the Chamber that the Scottish Government will now engage at stage 3 on any amendments they believe would be necessary to deliver a safe and compassionate choice for terminally ill adults in Scotland who wish it?
First Minister.
President, the Government is actively considering this issue, and obviously the Government has to be mindful of the position, which will be sustained during the bill, that it has a neutral position on the bill. I acknowledge that there will be technical, practical, operational and legislative questions that the Government will be called upon to engage with, and that issue is under active consideration within Government at this time. But I stress that there will be a multiplicity of issues that have to be wrestled with, and the Government will give consideration to those questions in good faith.
Thank you. We move to constituency and general supplementaries. I'd be grateful for concise questions and responses. I call Christine Graham.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. First Minister will be aware of the outbreaks of avian flu at Glenrath Farm in my constituency, the largest egg producer in Scotland, 1 million eggs a day. Thousands of birds have been culled, and all the Glenrath eggs and the shells have been recalled. Can I therefore ask the First Minister for an update on the contamination security measures at that site, and at the risk of reprising the infamous Edwina Curry egg panic, an assurance that the eggs on shelves now, given that recall, are safe?
First Minister.
President, we are aware of a cluster of outbreaks of the halopathogenic avian influenza H5N1 in the Scottish borders. Food safety is a matter for the Food Standards Agency. Public Health Scotland advises, and this is the point that Christine Graham was asking me about, advises that the risk to public health from the virus is very low, and that Food Standards Scotland advises that avian influenza pose a very low food safety risk for consumers. Properly cooked poultry and poultry products, including eggs, are safe to eat on the advice of Public Health Scotland. But I also assure Christine Graham, that there are rigorous safety measures in place to monitor the condition of different sites, and that is what has highlighted the issues that are faced in the borders.
Rachel Hamilton.
Presiding Officer, on Saturday I will meet with over 40 community councils at an energy convention in the Borders. They feel voiceless because monster pylons and other infrastructure industrialise the Borders countryside without a clear plan from the SNP government. An invitation was sent to your Energy Minister, Gillian Martin, nearly a month ago with no response received. And now we learn that she's abdicated responsibilities for consents to another SNP minister. Does this chaos not prove your energy strategy is confused, incoherent and failing communities? First Minister, could you personally guarantee that these communities will receive a response from Gillian Martin by the end of the day?
Always through the chair, please. First Minister.
Obviously, ministerial invitations will be considered and judgments arrived at as to whether it's appropriate for ministers to be undertaking these issues. In relation to the determination of applications, a decision has been taken that Ivan McKee will determine applications given his wider planning responsibilities, and the importance of those approaches has been taken. And what I would say to Rachel Hamilton is the Government is absolutely committed to ensuring that Scotland's enormous renewable energy wealth is utilised for the benefit of the people of Scotland, and I look forward to making more progress on that when Scotland is able to exercise the powers of independence to lower fuel bills by putting Scotland's energy wealth to work for the people of Scotland.
Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It's understood that the tanker seized by the US authorities last week is currently in Scottish waters, and I understand from reports that the First Minister was not briefed on this by the UK Government. So can the First Minister provide an update on what the Scottish Government's understanding is of the current situation with regard to the seized tanker?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, as Audrey Nicholl has recounted, the Government was not advised that this vessel was coming into Scottish waters, and I think it's pretty obvious that when such an event happens, there could well be implications for the exercise of Scots law and Scots jurisprudence when a vessel of this type comes into Scottish waters. And I think, and I've raised this with the United Kingdom Government, my complete dissatisfaction at the absence of prior notice that this was going to be undertaken because of the potential interaction with our responsibilities. As one example of all of that, the Lord Advocate is currently seeking to establish that all aspects of the rule of law are being respected by the presence of this tanker in Scottish waters, which is her statutory responsibility as Lord Advocate, and also to be assured that the health and the welfare of those on board are preserved. So I think this, as an example of the total absence of proper formal communication from the United Kingdom Government to the Scottish Government about an issue that has implications for our delivery of our responsibilities. This is a shockingly poor example of the conduct of the United Kingdom Government.
Finlay Carson.
First Minister, my constituents are deeply alarmed that Dumfries and Galloway's Integrated Health Board plans to end Alzheimer's Scotland's commissioned dementia support on the 31st of March. Changes, they fear, will seriously harm the care of 373 people currently supported, including 235 in the guaranteed year of post-diagnostic support. I'm aware that you've recently been heavily engaged in looking at the future of dementia support through your Advanced Dementia Roundtable work, precisely to avoid changes made without proper consultation. Will you instruct your officials to engage urgently with the Health and Social Care Partnership and IGB in Dumfries and Galloway to secure and make public a dated continuity plan with a single family contact, name leads and a to-pay consultation timetable, and commit government, if required, to give support, including bridging arrangements, so there will be no cliff edge in April?
I'll remind members of the requirement to speak through the chair. First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I think Mr Carson makes a series of reasonable points. I'd be very pleased to convene the roundtable on Alzheimer's care, suggested to me by one of Scotland's leading and most distinguished industrialist Sir Ian Anderson, and I welcome Sir Ian's intervention to advance these issues and also the active participation of clinicians. Mr Carson makes a strong point about the early intervention support that Alzheimer's Scotland make, particularly in a community setting, which I suspect must be the context of the arrangements in Mr Carson's constituency. So I give him the assurance that I will take this issue away and explore it with the Health Secretary to see what steps we can take to ensure there is continuity of service, because it is very obvious that any disruption to the care arrangements of individuals with Alzheimer's is likely to be damaging to those individuals.
Alistair Allen.
Can I welcome the announcement in this week's Scottish Budget of a mansion tax on properties valued at over £1 million? While I'm sure not singled out, it seems likely that the new leader in Scotland of Mr Farage's party will be among the first to pay this. So, does the First Minister agree that it's fair to ask the wealthiest to contribute to public services, and that it will be good to see certain figures in the House of Lords doing so more evidently?
First Minister.
President, the Government has a foundation to its tax approach which is based on the progressive principle, and we have taken that principle and applied it to the council tax provisions at the higher end of the spectrum, and those policies will be brought forward as part of the Government's budget process.
Ash Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Latest COPFS figures show a 43% post-COVID rise in under-16s reported for rape and sexual assault. There is a crisis of violence against women and girls in Scotland. What we are currently doing is not working. So I'm going to ask the Government, will they please do something different and start at what the Lord Advocate has described as root cause offending, the violence against women of prostitution. Prostitution dehumanises women and girls, and this human rights abuse is currently state-sanctioned. So will the Government take this opportunity to stand up for women and girls and protect them and support my unbuyable bill?
First Minister.
First of all, I acknowledge unreservedly the significance of the issue that Ash Regan puts to me, and particularly the significant increase in sexual violence and the reporting of sexual violence within our society. And that's evidenced in a lot of the data that we have wrestled with in Parliament, and has resulted in the actions of the Government in ensuring that we have more cases being pursued, more prosecutions being taken to court, and more prosecutions being successfully achieved. But that is not in any way to suggest that there is not more that we need to do, which is about education and about advice and intervention to create a different culture in the attitude towards women and girls within our society, which of course is being fuelled by so much of the unacceptable material that is floating around on social media, in which the United Kingdom Government, I welcome some of the steps the UK Government has taken in the course of this week alone to apply greater regulatory force to many of these questions. Now, Ash Regan asked me specifically about her bill. The bill is at stage 1 consideration, and the Government has engaged in that bill, and we will obviously listen with care to the conclusions of the committee when that report is available to us.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's questions. Point of order, Keith Brown.
Sir, in relation to the question which I raised during First Minister's questions, a supplementary question from Alexander Stewart contained a statement that Clackmannanshire has received £9 million or more. The truth is, of course, that Clackmannanshire has not received a single penny. I think he may be confused with the award said to be given to the whole of Forth Valley rather than Clackmannanshire. It's also true that the money has not been paid yet, will not be paid for several months. It's also true the UK Government has allocated it to something called the Forth Valley Regional Partnership, a body which does not actually exist. Given the importance of these facts for jobs in my constituency, I wonder if Alexander Stewart can be given the opportunity to apologise for his error in order the facts can be put onto the official report.
Thank you, Mr Brown. You will be aware that the content of members' contributions is not a matter that the Chair would ordinarily rule on. Thank you. I'll move on to Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Chamber will be aware of reporting by Alice Faulkner at Clyde One News that a campaign leaflet issued by Labour features a made-up quote incorrectly attributed to maternity campaigner Claire Fleming, a quote she has publicly denied saying.
Mr Stewart, if I may, points of order should refer to whether proper procedures have or are being followed.
I'm coming into the parliamentary aspect of this, Presiding Officer. Despite promising on multiple occasions, if found out, I note that Mr Sarwar has yet to issue a public apology to Ms Fleming. Blatant disinformation of this type undermines trust in politicians, our politics and this very Parliament. And while you, as Presiding Officer, are not responsible for the output of members in a political space, fabricating quotes from members of the public has repercussions way beyond that political space and has serious potential for this very institution to be brought into disrepute. Can you outline, Presiding Officer, how members can ensure the accuracy of our output, both inside and outside this chamber? And will Anna Sarwar take this opportunity to put his full apology to Claire Fleming on the parliamentary record?
Thank you, Mr Stewart. As I indicated, this is not a matter for the Chair, but of course members should strive to be accurate always. Thank you. We conclude First Minister's questions. The next item of business is a members' business debate in the name of Maggie Chapman, and there will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the gallery, the public gallery and the chamber to do so.